In this week's parasha, Parashat Tazria, although the bulk of the parasha famously deals with tzara'at, this kind of spiritual skin illness which is also found on clothing and on homes, the parasha actually begins with the laws of childbirth, purity and impurity related to childbirth, and then also with the bris. And the Torah tells us, of course, that the bris takes place on the 8th day. Question is, why must the Torah tell us now that the bris on the 8th day? Surely we already know that from the story with Avraham, when Hashem commanded Avraham that all Jewish children will be brised on the 8th day. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that we wouldn't have known that from the command to Avraham, we wouldn't have known that the bris would take place even if the 8th day is on Shabbat. You would think that the bris should take place on the 8th day, or thereafter if the 8th day is Shabbat. Whereas, by repeating the mitzvah over here, the Torah telling us that the bris takes place even on Shabbat, if that is the 8th day of the child's life. If the child's bris was delayed, the child was unwell or whatever, then you'll have it later on. You won't have it on Shabbat. But Rabbi Moshe Feinstein asks, he says, we find that the bris takes place on the 8th day. An animal that is to be offered in a temple may only be offered from the 8th day of its life. A Kohen being inaugurated, as we've just seen, the inauguration of the Beit HaMikdash and the Kohanim, is inaugurated on the 8th day. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein asks, well, what's so special about the number 8? And there is much written on this, but his answer is surprising because he says, nothing special about the number 8. Okay, so what is going on over here? The only thing is that the number 8 means, the 8th day means that the child will have experienced a Shabbat, or the animal will have experienced a Shabbat, the Kohen will have experienced a Shabbat in his... In all of these cases, 8th day guarantees it, because the 8th day is the same day of the week as the day we start counting. So it means that the child's born on Tuesday, the bris is on Tuesday. Born on Wednesday, the bris is on Wednesday. Born on Shabbat, the bris is Shabbat. Right? But whatever it is, the child's going to have a Shabbat. If it's only 6 days, the child can be... if it's only 7 days, the child can be born on Sunday, brised on Shabbat, and he hasn't really experienced a Shabbat yet. So that's all well and good, but what's Shabbat got to do with it? Why is experiencing a Shabbat such an important part of this? So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says because the lesson of Shabbat is the lesson of creation. The fact that God created the entire world, the entire universe. That's a very important thing, because he says you could really have two theological models. You can have somebody who believes in God and believes that God is the master of the universe, but does not believe in God as the creator of the universe. So, for example, he says this was the Aristotelian and essentially Platonic philosophy, was that the universe had always existed. There was such a thing as God, but God was the ruler, controller of the universe, not the creator. The difference that it makes is whether this is something you are let's say, I have a business. If I've created the business, then it's my business. I own it. If I'm just the manager of the business, I don't own it. I'm simply managing it. It's a totally different dynamic. And he says with all of these things, whether it is offering the animal, whether it is essentially offering your child in terms of committing him to the covenant, whether it's the Kohanim being inaugurated into the service of Hashem, in all of these cases, the point is that we are not offering Hashem what is ours. We are giving to God what is already His. I'll explain it with an example that I was thinking, an analogy. Let's say I set up a trust fund, or I set up a bank account. Into that bank account, I put in a certain amount of money every week, every month, and I give you the card for that account that you can make withdrawals and spend the money. And then I say to you, and by the way, I want you to spend money on XYZ. Now you'll turn, I want you to buy this. You'll turn around and say, you know what, I don't want to, I don't feel like it, I don't want to do it. So I will say to you, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, it's my money. I'm giving you use of it generally, but there are certain conditions over here. This is how it works, that you're using my money. This is what I'm telling you to do. That, Rav Moshe Feinstein says, is how we could view it. It's my analogy, but the point is his, is that this is how we should view all of the things that Hashem has given us, and all of the things that we are giving Hashem. When I give tzedakah, as much as, in one sense, it's a greater mitzvah to give Hashem what is yours, right? Because you're sacrificing and you're giving of yours, but it's not true. It's not true. It's incorrect. You're not giving Hashem what's yours. You're giving Hashem what's His. You are merely returning to God. You are merely doing what... And the truth is, although that's to an extent less of a sacrifice to say, well, actually, I'm just giving God what's His already. I'm not, On the other hand, it entails a greater humility. There is less credit that you give to yourself. I'm not as likely to pat myself on the back and, and say, Yeshar Koach for the big mitzvah that I've done in giving money to Hashem's money. So it's really a different kind of dynamic over here. And the truth is, whilst we can say, well, when it comes to giving this amount of money, it's easier, this emotional commitment to say that everything belongs to Hashem, it's a very real and deep kind of commitment and kind of relationship. And this should be our starting point with, he says, with all of these mitzvot, with all of the things that we do, that really it's coming from Hashem. And Hashem has entrusted it to us for a certain amount of time and for certain purposes. But that's where it's coming from. See, the other idea here as well is that if we understand that everything comes from Hashem, so it doesn't just affect the way in which we give tzedakah, the way in which we use the certain amount of money that God has designated for His mitzvot, but it affects how we spend the rest of our money as well. It affects what we do with everything. Because you have necessary and unnecessary. You have a good thing to spend on and a not good thing. Maybe this is actually destructive. Well, I can say, well, it's my money. I'll spend it on destructive things if I want. But now you understand it's not your money, it's God's money. And even though you have spent some of the money exactly according to His specific wishes, the rest of the money also is His. The rest of the money also should be spent as He has clarified. And another point on this is that He says when it comes to the building of the Mishkan, if you look back to Parshat Truma, Hashem tells us, I want you to bring... Tell the Jewish people to give me an offering from anyone who is inspired. I want them to bring, and Hashem gives the whole list: zahav, chesef, and choshet, agaman, that they should have gold, silver, copper, beautiful fabrics, leather. The whole thing is this whole list. And only after the entire list is completed, Hashem says, and you know what this is for? This is so that you build a Beit HaMikdash, so I'll live amongst you. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says, why not tell from the beginning? Because we don't want the dynamic over here to be where Hashem is, so to speak, coming to you for fundraising, and He's got to present what the project is before you decide whether it's worthy to give. I go to somebody and I say, listen, I have this project and I'd love you to be a partner in it, and this is our budget, and this is what, and he thinks about it, and yes, I will, no, I won't, I'll half, contact me if nobody else helps you. Right? Why? Because I'm asking you for your money. So I need to convince you that this is an appropriate place to spend on your money. It's not like that with Hashem. Hashem does not need to convince us of the greatness of His projects before asking for our money. It's His money. Hashem saying, listen, firstly, if you want, He puts it up to us, if you're feeling inspired, I'd like my money back, right? And secondly, I want to put it towards the Mishkan. But it's two different things, and that's the kind of pervasive attitude, and it's something that it's a very deep realization, but it's a very empowering realization, to remember that everything we have is from Hashem. Everything we have belongs to Hashem, as King David says, Ki shachah hakol miyadcha natanu lach. Yours is everything, and from your own hand we have given to you. Whatever we give to Hashem was already Hashem. And whatever we have in life, every moment, everything that you own right now, just think about it, everything that you own right now is entrusted to you by God. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful and very inspiring feeling. And so I wish you a wonderful and very inspiring Shabbat.